Welcome to News Now with Kevin Dietz. Tonight we get into Michigan politics. Are we a red state or a blue state? Our expert says we're actually a purple state whose 2020 results could turn us to one party or the other for the next several years. And he's a celebrity lawyer who's recognized everywhere he goes, maybe because he puts on some of the best local Super Bowl ads in town. But we begin tonight with an attack high in the skies. A woman says she fell asleep on a plane, and when she woke up, the man in the seat next to her was fondling her. Even more offensive, she says, is what the airlines did next. We asked former federal prosecutor Keith Corbett to review the case, and he joins us now. Keith, how are you?
Fine, how are you, Kevin?
Good, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So this is a strange case. She's in the middle seat on a Spirit Airlines coming from Atlanta to Detroit. And she doesn't know the person in the aisle seat, and she falls asleep. And she wakes up, and she's being fondled. She says that this man has his hand in her pants. And she hits the buzzer, to call the flight attendants. 4 of them come down, and they say, you have to... We'll give you another seat to the woman. And she says, no, move him, why do I have to move him? And they say, no, we're going to move you. We're going to get you another seat. Come on with us. And she says she doesn't want to go. And then all of a sudden she says, well, you know what? Now it's too late. We're landing. And the federal rules are that when we're landing, everybody has to stay seated. So you have to stay seated next to this guy who allegedly attacked her. Is that actually a federal law?
Well, that would be an aviation law an aviation regulation as opposed to a law dealing with improper conduct. So I really couldn't answer that. I mean, I've certainly seen people, come out of the restroom as the plane's getting ready to land and take a seat. I don't know if there was a free seat available. It seemed to me it would have been pretty easy to move one or the other within 10 or 15 seconds.
It seems kind of crazy to me to say, oh, sorry, we have a federal regulation that we can't move you during landing. I mean, obviously there's situations that happen on planes and they get up and they move people if they have to.
Right.
But in this case, they said we're not going to
I've seen people traveling with children running down the aisle as the plane's landing, trying to get a hold of the kid. So obviously, it seems to me to be, even if there is a regulation, it's one that they probably could have adapted the situation to and dealt with by moving one or the other. The bigger problem seems to be, for one reason or another, the airline didn't want to move the alleged perpetrator of the offense. They wanted to move the person who claimed to be the victim. And it seems to me that she apparently didn't want to move, so that delayed the process somewhat. There's no indication that they even discussed with the alleged defendant his moving. So it's difficult to understand exactly what went on in that context.
If it did happen, it would be pretty horrifying to have to sit there for the next 20 minutes with somebody who
absolutely
did that.
And you would think the airline's first concern would be with the person who was alleging that they were the victim of this assault, rather than with the person who was the purported defendant. I mean, I would have said, sir, we don't know exactly what's happened here. Would you please move your seat to this location, and then we'll deal with it when the plane lands. And then the question even becomes what happened when the plane landed.
Yeah, and I think they did finally move them once the plane landed, is my understanding.
But I mean, in terms of getting off and dealing with the issue after that. Again, I don't know what the size of the defendant. You have a 5'3", 110-pound flight attendant and a 6'4" guy sitting in the chair. She may be somewhat intimidated.
Well, they did say, so they said they had 4 attendants came down, 2 men and 2 women. Okay. So they did take care of that. And the airline said, what we did was we started the investigation immediately once the plane landed. We called the local authorities or the airport police, and they also called the FBI. Why would the FBI be involved?
The FBI is involved because any offense committed on an airline is covered by federal regulation, because of the fact that in the course of traveling, an airplane may go over 8-9 states easily. So you don't have to be in the situation of saying, oh, well, were we over Ohio or Michigan when this offense occurred? It occurred in an airplane, and therefore the federal government has jurisdiction to initiate a charge.
So if they decide that there's enough evidence to go forward with a sexual assault case, would that then be a federal case?
Could very well be brought in federal court.
Are they different? Are they very different, a state law or?
Not generally. There are a number of things. For one thing, there's an assimilated jurisdiction where if the federal law, if it takes place on federal property or a place where there's federal jurisdiction, they can assimilate the state law into prosecuting a case simply on jurisdictional grounds. For instance, if you were in a federal park and you were drunk driving, they can charge you with a violation of Michigan. They assume the Michigan law applies in the federal context. So even though you're driving on a federal estate, they apply Michigan law. They assume the law of the state.
I guess if you're in the air, where Metro Airport is, you could be in Ohio.
Right. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons for it. And there are a number of federal violations themselves dealing with passenger conduct, so it may be covered by some of those as well.
So, do you think that the airlines has a civil liability for not moving this person?
It's certainly conceivable. I mean, the woman was obviously placed in a very unpleasant and uncomfortable situation, especially if they get to the point where they actually initiate charges and the defendant is either pleads guilty or convicted. Then she can come in and say, 3/4 of her case is made. She says, look, they made me sit next to this guy. He engaged in this conduct. He did this to me. And the airline didn't take appropriate steps to protect me, both personally and psychologically. Just sitting next to him for an extra 10 or 15 minutes was a traumatic experience from my perspective.
So there probably wasn't an air marshal on this plane, I'm guessing.
Unlikely. I think they would have brought him in immediately. And it's not an international flight. I mean, I don't know where it was originated.
It's coming from Atlanta.
Yeah, less likely to see those on purely domestic flights. I mean, there are not enough air marshals to fly on every flight, and they're usually the biggest planes with the longest distance between stops or international or those kinds of things, because those are the planes most likely to have a major problem.
Yeah, I feel like if an air marshal was on that plane, they would have moved the woman, and they might have had an air marshal sit next to the alleged suspect.
It's quite likely. I mean, he'd come down and say, look, I'm going to stay here next to you. We'd probably even try to talk to him if the guy was willing to talk to him at that time to get information from him.
And you would think that the staff, the flight attendants, would be trained for this kind of thing, because we do hear of this kind of thing.
Right, and you would think, I'm assuming at least it seems the first person that spoke to her was another woman. You would think they would be perhaps even more attuned to the issues than a man might be in that situation.
So do you think you end up with retraining here and maybe a lawsuit at the end of the day? Does somebody get fired, or does the airline say, look, we did the right thing. We called the police, we called the FBI, let the FBI investigate their case, and no harm, no foul?
I think the first thing the airline has to do in that situation is have a policy of who gets moved. And it seems to me that the policy ought to be that, and again, this is a choice. They can do either way they want. But it seems to me, if I were advising them, I would try to move the alleged perpetrator as opposed to the alleged victim. Say, look, you got to get away from her. We'll deal with this later when we land, or whatever the case may be. But I would think they'd want a uniform policy. Now, if there hadn't been another seat available, then you have a more difficult problem. Although even then, you could probably ask around and try to get one or two people to voluntarily move. Say to a guy, you want to switch seats with, you wouldn't want to put him next to a woman. But it would seem to me, if I were the airline, I'd want a hard and fast policy over who we move in that situation. And then you can fall back on policy in future events. Say, we've decided for the following reasons it's best to move A or B. And it seems to me that most people would agree that the woman ought not to be the person that has to move.
All right, thanks, Keith Corbett, for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll be right back with News Now. Welcome back to News Now. Our next guest you are definitely going to recognize. His image is everywhere on billboards all over town, and you probably will recognize him from commercials, which some of them are the best in the business. Mike Morris, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin. Congratulations on your new show.
Yeah, thanks for having fun. We really are. I should tell people that we do a podcast together. I do generate some income from that. That aside, I think your story is fascinating, and I'm glad you're here.
My pleasure.
But so how do you go from a lawyer to a lawyer who's everywhere? It doesn't just happen overnight, right?
It doesn't. 2011, I made a decision that I was going on TV and that I wanted to kind of expand my firm. And we went from about 40 people to about 150 people in a very short period of time, because the ads and the messaging and just getting my name out there. Before 2011, nobody really knew who I was. So with the help of some very creative people like Ross Lerner at Lerner Advertising and others, we were able to craft some messages that, got people to know who I was, got people to know who my family, what I stood for, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and so we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, you can't just say anyone who has a law degree jump on and buy a bunch of TV commercials because it's expensive and it takes time for the cases to come through, right?
Right.
And the payback takes a while.
It does. But I think that I wanted to do it a little differently. Like, I think a lot of the commercials out there in my market were kind of vanilla, and everybody was kind of following the herd and saying the same things. And I wanted to be a different flavor. I wanted to be Cherry Garcia, something unique, something different, something memorable. And I think we pulled it off.
Yeah, so one of the big stars of your commercials is your mom. In fact, I think you did a commercial where she keeps getting recognized and nobody knows you. Is that like a little truth there in the real
All
world?
my commercials are truth. I mean, my mom gets recognized, and people come up to her and want selfies and are so nice to her. We're at the Eastern Market and they're giving her free bread, or we're at a restaurant and people are coming up and giving her a dessert, and she gets embarrassed. But she loves it, and everybody's been super nice. But the truth is, that commercial came out of it because I was having lunch with Ross one day, and I said, my mom's getting recognized more than me. And so that's where Sue's Son came up.
Yeah.
And we did a commercial called Sue's Son that people actually do say to me, hey, you're Sue's son. And I love it. I love my mom. We get along great, and I appreciate her doing it.
She's really good on camera. I mean, is it fun, or you guys just feel like you're at home doing it, or the cameras don't seem to bother?
Remind me next time you're at the office. I'll show you some of our blooper reels.
Oh.
Because my mom, there's a lot of bloopers.
Yeah.
But she does a great job. She's a good sport because we don't use teleprompters.
Right.
And so we have to memorize our lines, and sometimes they're long. So we're trying to shorten her lines a little bit, but
Right.
she does a great job, and I'm honored that she's willing to do it, because not every mom would do it.
Yeah, no, for sure, and she's good at it, and it works, I guess, right?
It works.
People connect. That helps people connect when they say, "Hey, this is a regular guy."
Yeah, they see an authentic relationship. They see that I love my mom, and I don't know. I mean, you have to ask people, but I mean, I think it's because of the authenticity. It makes her approachable. They know that I'm approachable because I am, and I don't know, and it adds some fun. I mean, my mom and I like to do fun commercials. She's very funny. I think I get some of my sense of humor from her, and so she's up for anything.
Right.
So that's the beauty of it.
So, do people knock you a lot for having so many commercials? Does anyone ever say, "Oh, stop with the commercials," or "That's just too much"?
When I walked into your station, the two women at the front desk recognized me and said, "Oh, we see your commercials all the time." And sometimes I want to say sorry, but 99% of the time it's positive. Mm-hmm. And you brought up an interesting point, and I haven't even really articulated this ever, Kevin. I want to make commercials that people want to see. Not commercials that people want to fast forward. So that's why I like to do like the ambulance chaser.
Let's talk about that, okay? Because that is one story that commercial just was great. It was for the Super Bowl, and literally we're seeing you running down the street chasing an ambulance. But there's more of a story to be told there.
Well, I'm not really chasing an ambulance, So in the media, and I know you're a newsman, sometimes things aren't always as they seem, and that was the point we were trying to get across. I also don't mind making fun of myself. I also, I have a pretty good self-deprecation to me, to my personality, and so the ambulance, my dad was a personal injury lawyer since the 60s. Unfortunately, he died in 1990, but, I used to hear growing up, the derogatory term ambulance chaser, and it's something the lawyers don't talk about. It's one of those things that you don't touch. The public says that about lawyers, and then they say, well, until you need a lawyer, whatever. But I want to take it head on, because people have reported wrongly about me in the past, and things that have nothing to do with me, but my name ends up in a stupid headline by some of our papers. And we wanted to take that back and say, it looks like I'm chasing an ambulance. I'm not. I'm trying to return a man's wallet who dropped it. I'm running, and it was like 5 degrees that night. And then the social media goes crazy. But people go nuts for that commercial. The owner of your station was just going on and on about it just now to me. I won. So today, 4 days ago, I won a national award in Miami from the National Trial Lawyers Association, saying that was the best 30-second spot of the year in the entire country for legal advertising. I haven't even posted that on social media yet, so you're getting
Breaking news.
You're getting a scoop.
Breaking news.
So that was really meaningful
Yeah.
because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have high production value, good messages, fun, and people know what I do. So I have to stay top of mind because that's what advertising's about, of course. But it was special.
Super Bowl's right around the corner. Do you have an ad for this?
Again, I watched it this morning.
Did you like it?
I did like it. A few tweaks are being made right now. I think you're going to like it. I'll get you a sneak preview, but I can't give too much away.
No.
But it'll be right around halftime.
Okay.
I believe we're the only Michigan law firm, again, 7th year in a row doing it. So it's, again, outside the box. The commercial is, as well as being on the Super Bowl, because that's a unique place to be.
Absolutely. Congratulations. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Thank you.
Morris.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more on News Now with Kevin Dietz. Welcome back to News Now. For a long time, Michigan has been considered a blue state when it comes to picking presidents. Anyway, before Donald Trump was narrowly elected, you have to go all the way back to 1988 to find a Republican president we voted for. Our next guest says election 2020 could change all of that. Dennis Dernoy, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
So there was this blue wall, right, of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
Is the wall crumbling? Is it building back up? Is it even a wall anymore? Are the states going to go their own way? What's going to happen?
I mean, that's definitely the question that everyone's looking at. You know, Democrats are in a position where they have to completely rebuild the wall. They have to win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan if they have a chance to win back the presidency. Republicans, on the other hand, have to hold just one of those. So can Democrats do it? There's trends that suggest that Wisconsin is still more of a red state, Michigan being a purple state, and Pennsylvania being a blue state.
How close were the elections in all three of these states last time around?
Oh, incredibly close. I mean, Trump only won Michigan by 10,000 votes. And you can think of the Detroit area, or you can think of, Bay County, Saginaw County, where a change in African American votes in any of those communities would have possibly altered the election.
And they were similarly close in the other states, but not as close,
absolutely. Right, correct. Yes.
So they have the same situation.
Yeah, you're looking really at about 1 percentage point difference in terms of winning and losing.
You said Michigan's purple. What is a purple state?
Purple state is one where voters really are ticket splitters, willing to vote for, let's say, a Republican at the top of the ticket, and then a Democrat for U.S. Senate, like we've seen with Debbie Stabenow, or reverse, where they voted for a Democrat for president way back when, as you say, in '88, Spence Abraham for U.S. Senate. So it's a community of people who are willing to cross party lines and vote more for the individual than necessarily the party.
So what does Donald Trump have to do to win in Michigan?
He has to do two things. One, he needs to increase his vote percentage in the west side of the state, Grand Rapids. And that's very interesting because we saw Gretchen Whitmer, Jocelyn Benson go in there and win it as Democratic candidates. So he needs to get a greater vote margin coming out of Kent County, Grand Rapids in that area. Second of all, there were about 1.5 million non-college educated white voters in Michigan who did not vote in 2016. Eligible to, but did not. That is essentially his pool, and he needs to tap into that pool to expand the number of voters that he could potentially attract.
You mentioned Gretchen Whitmer. We just learned that she has actually been chosen to give the response to President Trump's State of the Union address. Is that because Michigan's so important to the Democrats?
It's exactly it, and they're trying to highlight the type of candidate and the messages that they think that can carry not only Michigan, but Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I mean, she's a Democratic female governor who won a state that Trump won only 2 years prior, and a lot on a increased wave of, she basically was able to rally the resistance, and what that is suburban female voters who are not fans of the president, were Republicans, but now are trending to vote Democrats. The African American and Latino community, she increased turnout percentages there, and then younger voters, 18 through 29. So that's the type of coalition that Democrats need to expand upon here in Michigan if they're going to win the state.
Is that the kind of thing that can work? You see your governor up there and you say, oh, my governor's, doing well on the national stage. I guess I will go vote this time. Is it enough to really swing it? Or the other issue I've always wondered about is if you have a Democratic governor like we do, will Michigan get more if we have a Democratic president? Does it really work that way?
So 2 different questions there. The first one is, you like seeing your state represented, and I don't know that it will necessarily increase turnout. I mean, I think that, absentee ballots go out tomorrow. I think candidates and their campaigns are going to be ginning up the turnout there. But to see your governor, to see your state highlighted on a national audience, yes, that is something that people are very, very proud about. So with her, again, it's highlighting the type of candidate that they believe that can win in these blue states.
President Trump is going to be the first president to be at the March for Life. Mm-hmm. Does that help him or does that hurt him?
It helps him because the people who support Trump, who are evangelical Christians and pro-life, have had presidents, Republican presidents in the past, who have promised them lots and lots of things. Trump is really one of the first presidents to actually deliver on those promises and to carry out an agenda that is in line with what they have asked for, for presidential support. So I think it helps him quite a bit. It's a base that he needs to lock down. And again, when we look over on the west side of the state and the Grand Rapids area, he needs to increase support among those people.
What about the woman vote, though? As far as that issue in particular, many women would be on the other side of that issue.
For sure. And I think there is a calculation on who's going to support him. Where are the persuadables? I mean, how many of those female voters would you be able to bring back? And there is a significant number, it's still a minority, but a significant number of women who are pro-life and who do support the president on those issues. It's not necessarily a unanimous monolith on one side. So he needs to continue to get those supporters and to continue to provide them inspiration to turn out. And again, that's an issue that when you look at the Supreme Court and the justices that they look to support, that's a very, very important issue and a very important constituency.
And real quick, how important is the absentee ballot?
Massive. It's a massive, because this time you can vote with no reason absentee. We've seen a continued trend going up. So we're probably thinking between 62 and 65% of the people are going to vote absentee. And depending, that could be as close to 1.1 million voters without ever going to the ballot box.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us tonight. On Monday, we'll meet a local doctor who tells us everything we need to know about that killer virus in China and if we really need to worry about it here in America. And the Michigan State Police come on to tell us what they know about those breathalyzer machines and the entire fiasco. For News Now, I'm Kevin Dietz. Good night and have a good weekend.